My name is Sandra. I want to share a story I've been wanting to share all this while, and I want your opinion on how you would handle this situation if you were in my shoes. Exactly 1 year ago, my entire family blocked my phone number on their phones. I held up my simple, modern smartphone. The blocking did not happen during a loud, screaming argument or a messy, emotional fight. It happened while I was sitting quietly and completely helpless in a borrowed, heavy wheelchair in my own living room. I was holding a terrifying, thick stack of huge medical bills in my lap, right after a horrible car accident that had completely shattered my spine, leaving me mostly paralyzed from the waist down and dependent on others. My mother-in-law, Brenda, a woman whose approval I had always desperately craved, took my husband Kyle's phone right out of his hand, acting quickly and without any mercy. She typed out the cruelest, most hateful message possible, which says, "You're a complete burden. Don't contact us again ever, you worthless thing." And she quickly pressed the block button. Then she looked directly into my eyes with a stare that was cold and hateful, completely devoid of any human warmth, and did exactly the same thing on her own phone, ensuring my total isolation. The very last, awful sound I heard was the loud, chilling click of the front door deadbolt turning as they all walked out and left me completely alone, crying silently in the cold, silent house. My body ached, but the pain in my heart was 100 times worse than the constant, burning pain in my broken spine. I was trapped. Flashback. I thought back to the horrific scene just a few minutes before the awful blocking began. Brenda, my husband Kyle, and my sister-in-law Tara surrounded me in the small space of the living room. They were not standing there offering any kind of comfort or support, even though I was clearly in terrible, constant pain and absolutely terrified for my future. Instead, Brenda stood tall and stern, quickly calling the gathering an intervention, a cruel name for what was actually an organized attack. She had a cold, professional clipboard in her hand, and began listing every single way my terrible car accident and my resulting, permanent injury had seriously and offensively inconvenienced their perfect, easy lives. She droned on about Kyle's missed promotions because he had to come home early to help me, and Tara's expensive, completely ruined and postponed vacation to the coast, and the huge, massive financial strain the growing medical bills were constantly putting on their family budget. Her voice was flat, cold, and completely empty of any human emotion. They quickly twisted the conversation completely, accusing me, the victim, of milking my serious injury just for unnecessary attention and extra financial help. They spoke as if my broken back was a small, temporary, silly headache I could easily choose to get over if I wanted to. The stunning lack of basic human kindness and decency in their voices was completely unforgivable, and made my stomach churn with pure sickness. I realized they saw me not as a loved one, but as an expensive obstacle that needed to be forcibly removed from their wealthy path. Brenda finished her terrible, long list of my supposed failings. Failings that were purely the result of a random, dangerous car accident. And then she calmly presented the final, terrifying solution they had all secretly agreed upon days ago. Her voice was steady and completely emotionless, as if she were simply discussing which car wash to visit. Sandra is to voluntarily admit herself to a state-funded long-term care facility immediately, she declared, looking triumphant. This cruel move, she explained with a chilling, cold smile that didn't reach her eyes, would completely free Kyle from the huge, heavy burden of my constant, round-the-clock care. She said it would allow him to move on with his life, quickly and quietly without the crushing financial and emotional weight of a disabled wife constantly slowing him down and costing him a fortune. The cold, calculated, and utterly heartless nature of their entire plan stunned me more deeply than the sharp, constant, burning pain in my back. It was not a request I could refuse. It was a cruel, non-negotiable command designed to literally throw me away like yesterday's garbage. I realized that to them, I was not a person who was hurt and needed love. I was a broken, expensive appliance they no longer wanted, and they planned to send me to the government dump to disappear. This chapter focuses on the awful, heartbreaking moment I realized I had completely lost my husband, Kyle. I desperately pleaded with my eyes, looking straight into his, trying to send a silent, urgent message through my gaze. I searched his face frantically for the kind, loving, protective man I had happily married many years ago. I needed him desperately to stand up tall and tell his mother and sister to stop this cruel, wicked plan immediately before they destroyed me. But he just stood there, staring down at his own shaking hands, his face pale, blank, and completely emotionless. He muttered something low and weak, a pathetic sound, avoiding my gaze completely, unable to meet my pleading eyes. Maybe Mom is right, Sand. We just honestly can't handle this level of financial and emotional pressure anymore. It's too much, he whispered, sounding like a complete, frightened child. His voice was barely a whisper, a sound of complete cowardice, but the words hit me with the force of a train wreck that totaled my heart. In that terrible moment, the true emotional core of my life and our marriage shattered completely and forever. The instant his loyalty to me, his solemn marriage vow, shattered, the betrayal was complete, total, and irreversible. I knew the kind, loving Kyle I had married was gone forever, completely replaced by a weak, selfish, cowardly man who valued money and his mother's cruel approval more than his own wife's life and safety. After Brenda pressed the block button on both phones and the final, awful lock clicked into place, I was left sitting there in a total, deep state of shock. My mind was reeling. The silence in the house was now immediately deafening, heavy with their absence and my immediate, awful new reality, abandonment. I tried desperately to call Kyle back, holding the phone with my shaking, useless hands, but the calls would not go through at all. I tried texting him a simple, desperate, single-word plea, help, but the messages failed to send immediately. I knew what failure meant now. They were gone, they hated me, and I was totally isolated and alone. My next thought was to use my heavy wheelchair to follow them outside, to somehow reason with them or plead for them to come back, and at least unlock the door so I could get out and get help. But when I managed to reach the front door handle and desperately turned it, I realized the full, massive extent of their wicked cruelty. The heavy deadbolt was locked firmly from the outside, preventing any escape. They did not just coldly block my phone number. They physically locked me inside the silent, huge house, leaving me completely alone, helpless, and totally unable to feed myself or manage my own severe medical care. I was a prisoner in my own home, left to suffer slowly and fade away into the darkness. The next agonizing 48 hours were a complete, dark, terrifying spiral into the absolute depths of despair and pure, overwhelming physical pain. I had no access to any food that I could possibly reach from my low position in the wheelchair. The pantry door was too high, the fridge too heavy. My crucial prescription pain medication, which I needed desperately to manage the constant, burning, electric agony in my broken back, began to run out completely, and the pain became a white-hot, relentless hammer. The crushing, awful realization that the people I had loved and completely trusted most in the entire world had deliberately, coldly, and expertly discarded me like simple, useless trash was much worse than the physical pain itself. I had never felt such complete and utter abandonment in my entire life, not even close. When the pain became too sharp and relentless to bear, and the hunger became too intense and distracting, I knew I had to act immediately before I passed out. This chapter ended with me using my very last tiny bit of strength, crawling slowly, painfully, and agonizingly across the cold wooden floor, dragging my broken body to the front door, and screaming with all my remaining might for a kind neighbor to hear my muffled pleas for help. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a kind neighbor named Mrs. Penelope heard my muffled, desperate screams, looked over the hedge, and immediately called the ambulance. I was rescued, barely alive, at my absolute rock bottom. I slowly woke up what felt like days later in a pristine, bright, white hospital bed, completely confused but finally safe and warm. The overwhelming, sharp pain in my back was mercifully dulled by strong medication, and I was no longer starving or thirsty. A kind, firm, no-nonsense social worker named Maria came to my bedside with a stern but kind face. I told her the entire unbelievable, painful story in a rush of tears and broken, rushed words, spilling the cruel truth. Maria listened calmly, securing all my personal details and filing multiple reports about my abandonment. The terrifying, immediate truth was that I had absolutely no money, no home to which I could safely return, since Kyle was technically on the lease, and I was facing a forced discharge very soon. Maria worked tirelessly and bravely on my behalf. She managed to secure me a spot in a temporary, simple, but clean shelter for women in crisis. It was a humbling, difficult, scary place to go, but it was also a vital, safe haven, a completely secure place where I could finally begin to start healing without the constant, crushing fear of my family's return or their rejection. I was finally free physically, but utterly ruined and alone financially. A few tense days later, as I was officially being discharged from the hospital and prepared to go to the shelter, a friendly nurse handed me a small, crumpled envelope containing my entire personal effects. My fingers trembled violently as I slowly opened it. Inside were my cheap, simple wedding ring, an old rubber hair tie, a crumpled receipt, and a single $10 bill. The nurse explained kindly that the single bill had been found deep in the pocket of the jeans I was wearing on the terrible day of the car accident. It was the only actual cash I had left in the entire world, a symbol of my absolute poverty, my financial helplessness, and my broken independence. I carefully folded the $10 bill and put it deep into my new shelter locker, feeling the scratch of the rough metal. I looked at the $10 and thought about what it represented. A single, final, desperate choice. I could use it to buy a few cheap, unsatisfying meals from the vending machine, or I could do something completely reckless, desperate, and absurd, something that might remind me that I was still alive and could still fight back against the unfairness of the universe that had beaten me down. The women's shelter was located right next door to a busy, brightly lit corner store, a constant source of noisy traffic and glaring lights. Walking slowly past the convenience store with the painful help of a metal walker, I saw the huge, glowing red and white lottery sign advertising the massive, life-changing $45 million jackpot. The light seemed to cruelly mock my empty pockets and my broken, worthless life. I paused, leaning heavily on the walker, feeling the exhaustion deep in my bones. An idea, completely crazy, stupid, and utterly desperate, suddenly popped into my wounded mind. On a complete, final whim. A desperate, absurd act of final defiance against a universe that had completely beaten me down, broken my body, and stolen my entire family. I pulled out my last, crumpled $10 bill. I walked slowly inside the brightly lit store and used the last $10 to buy a single, quick-pick lottery ticket. I did not even bother to look at the numbers. I simply shoved the small paper ticket deep into the pocket of my borrowed sweatpants, immediately thinking it was the single stupidest, most ridiculous, most desperate thing I had ever done in my entire miserable life. Days later, the winning moment finally came, not with a dramatic, loud bang or an instant flash of light, but with a quiet, stunning, deep realization that changed everything forever. I was sitting quietly in the small, shared common room at the shelter, watching the quiet evening news on the old, grainy television set with the other women. The local news anchor suddenly began announcing the exact winning numbers for the huge $45 million jackpot. I listened casually at first, barely paying attention, but then a sudden, intense feeling of deep dread and nervous, powerful hope washed over me like a cold wave. With a heart that was now trembling violently and frantically in my chest, I slowly pulled the crumpled, wrinkled ticket from my pocket. I looked at the screen, then down at the numbers on the tiny piece of paper in my hand. The numbers matched perfectly. 1 by 1, then 2 by 2. They all matched the ones on the screen, exactly. My vision blurred and the room spun slightly. I won. I did not scream, I did not cry out, and I did not jump up in sudden celebration or tell anyone. I just sat there, completely still, surrounded by the ordinary noise of the shelter, in a stunned, profound, cold, life-changing silence. My old life had suddenly ended, and a new, powerful one had just begun. My very first crucial phone call after I slowly and carefully confirmed the win was not to a random celebratory friend, or an ambulance chaser lawyer advertising loudly on TV. It was to an old, trusted, brilliant college friend, a wonderful man named Leo, who had since become a very successful, ruthless, and highly ethical lawyer in the city. I found his number through an old, dusty email from years ago. My voice was shaky with shock, but I managed to tell him 2 critical things in a rush. Leo, I just won the massive $45 million lottery. And absolutely no one, especially not my family who cruelly abandoned me, can ever know about this win until I tell them. Leo was quiet on the line for a long, heavy moment, processing the sheer gravity of my situation and the massive risk. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, serious, and full of professional purpose. He immediately agreed to help me keep the win an absolute, total secret and protect me completely from my malicious, greedy family. He instructed me firmly to stay completely silent, to tell no one, and promised to meet me immediately the next morning to begin the complex legal process of claiming the huge prize completely anonymously and securing my safety and freedom. Leo immediately proved himself to be the perfect, strategic, indispensable ally I desperately needed. He quickly connected me with a discreet and highly ethical financial advisor named Mr. Sterling, a stern man who specialized in handling the complex finances of extremely wealthy but private clients. We formed a tight-knit, secret trio, ready for war. Our first, most immediate goal was not frivolous, wasteful spending. It was to get me the absolute best medical care possible. The best spinal surgery available and the best, most advanced physical therapy money could buy, all done completely under a carefully constructed false name at a private, secluded clinic in another state, far away from my past life. We knew that before I could ever fight back against their cruelty, I had to be physically strong and mentally well again. Leo created a complex trust and legally claimed the money in absolute secret, and I was whisked away to begin my healing journey immediately, disappearing like a ghost from the city and their awareness. The months that followed were intense, grueling, and completely life-changing in every way. With the top-tier, world-class medical care that the $45 million could now instantly buy, my broken body slowly, gradually, agonizingly began to heal and rebuild itself. I worked tirelessly and without complaint every single day in physical therapy, enduring painful, demanding sessions that pushed my limits. But even more importantly than the physical healing, I began to heal mentally and emotionally. I worked deeply and regularly with a kind, smart therapist, processing the deep, cruel, wicked betrayal by my family and confronting the raw, painful reality of what they had cold-heartedly done. The kind, submissive, people-pleasing woman I once was, the woman they abandoned, was completely gone and forgotten. She was slowly replaced by a new, steelier, wiser, and much more determined version of myself, ready for the painful fight ahead. I felt myself growing stronger inside and out, preparing quietly for the day I would finally face them again with total power and zero fear. To ensure that the immense secret of my lottery win remained protected and sealed, Leo helped me establish a complex limited liability company, LLC, to legally claim the winnings completely anonymously, shielding my name completely. I was given a new identity, at least professionally, and was hidden behind multiple layers of legal protection and corporate documents. I used a portion of the funds to rent a beautiful, secure, secluded apartment in a completely different new city, far away from my old life, and deliberately placed not in my legal name. I bought a new phone with a brand new, untraceable number. To my old family, I had effectively become a ghost, a destitute, weak woman who was likely still struggling and suffering in a public shelter, or was perhaps even tragically dead. They were wrong. I was secretly watching, planning, waiting patiently, all while they assumed I was powerless, broken, and completely forgotten. The sheer anonymity of my life felt like the safest, warmest blanket I had ever owned. A full, long year passed after the horrible betrayal. I was physically strong now, able to walk confidently and stand tall, financially secure beyond any reasonable imagination, and emotionally solid, my therapist confirming I was ready to face the world and them again. I was cautiously shopping in a high-end, beautiful, fancy grocery store that I once could only dream of entering in my old life. I felt completely relaxed, anonymous, and invisible. As I slowly turned a corner near the organic produce section, I suddenly came face to face with Tara, my sister-in-law. Her jaw literally dropped open instantly and she stopped breathing. She was standing there, staring at me, unable to speak, a dropped jar of olives rolling away. Tara's eyes widened horribly, instantly taking in my completely healthy, strong appearance, my expensive, well-fitting clothes, and the full cart of luxury, organic food I was calmly pushing. Her brain was clearly struggling violently to process the huge contradiction between the destitute, broken Sandra she expected and the healthy, wealthy, confident woman standing before her. She was panicked, visibly shaken, and looked like she was about to faint right there in the aisle. Panicked, shaken, and completely flustered by the shock, Tara immediately called Brenda and Kyle. Barely able to speak coherently, she told them everything she had just witnessed, describing my beautiful clothes and my healthy appearance in feverish detail. They did not believe her at all at first. She must be a shop assistant working there for tips, or a fraud, Brenda scoffed coldly over the phone. That woman is ruined and broken. It couldn't have been her, it must be a look-alike. But the sight of me, healthy and well, had planted a seed of curiosity and deep, unsettling doubt in their minds. Kyle, driven by a sudden spike of greed and suspicion, used an old, shared login information he had saved to secretly track me through a shared cloud account we once used for old photos. He found a single, huge clue, a recent high-quality photograph of a brand-new, luxury black car, a model he instantly recognized as incredibly expensive and exclusive. The photo was geotagged to a very affluent neighborhood far outside the city. The small seed of doubt immediately blossomed into full-blown, undeniable, toxic suspicion and intense, desperate greed. The bubble of my carefully constructed secrecy burst suddenly and violently. Leo called me, his voice tight with anger and professional concern. A low-level, greedy employee at the lottery office had been secretly bribed by a private investigator that Brenda had secretly hired using her meager savings. They had gotten a tiny bit of non-specific information about the winner's past. A major tabloid newspaper was now running a huge front-page story with the scary headline, "Mystery Woman Winner Emerges from Shadows. Lottery Jackpot Linked to Abandoned Home." While the article did not use my legal name, it gave enough very specific, detailed information about the accident, the exact timeline, and the location of the shelter for my family to put all the pieces of the puzzle together instantly and correctly. My precious anonymity was gone forever, and the terrible, greedy vultures were officially circling and descending on me, ready to attack. I knew my time to act was now, before they could concoct a complex plan, and the final, necessary game of retribution had officially begun. My new phone, the one with the untraceable number that only Leo and Mr. Sterling had, suddenly buzzed loudly in my hand. It was a text message from a new, unfamiliar number, but I knew immediately who it was. The message read, "Sandra, it's Kyle. I just heard the crazy, wonderful news. I'm so incredibly happy for you. We desperately need to talk. I've missed you so much, darling, my love." I looked down at the text message. The sheer, shocking audacity of his message, the sickening lack of a single, genuine apology for abandoning me, and the immediate, clear focus on the money made my blood run cold with quiet, controlled fury. It confirmed everything I needed to know about his motivation. Zero love, pure greed. I simply deleted the text message without replying, my silence being my power, but I knew the next confrontation would be face-to-face and soon, in a setting of my choosing. It did not take long for them to locate my general apartment building. The entire, horrible family, Kyle, Brenda, and Tara, suddenly showed up unannounced at the secured apartment building that Leo had rented for me under an LLC name. They had somehow buzzed themselves in, tricking a confused neighbor into letting them through the main gate, using an old, believable excuse. They were all dressed up in their best, most expensive clothes and were holding a huge, ridiculous bouquet of cheap, wilting flowers, trying to look loving. Brenda immediately launched into a terrible, tearful, clearly rehearsed speech about how worried sick they had been about me and how everything was just a terrible, unfortunate misunderstanding that had been completely caused by financial stress. Kyle stood there, looking at me with what he clearly thought was a soulful, deep regret in his eyes, trying to manipulate me with his gaze. I felt nothing but a powerful, cold wave of revulsion and deep disgust for all of them. The moment of the final exposure and truth came over the silent, formal dessert course. I calmly stood up from my chair, adjusting my expensive silk dress. In a calm, clear, cold voice that easily carried across the entire quiet, elegant restaurant, I began to slowly and deliberately recount the entire, terrible story of their cruel betrayal. I named each of them, Brenda, Kyle and Tara, and clearly named their exact, specific role in abandoning me when I was at my most vulnerable. You blocked me on the phone. You locked me out of my own house. You deliberately left me alone and helpless to starve and suffer with nothing but this single item. I paused for a long, dramatic, powerful moment, letting the heavy silence hang over the room. I reached into my small purse and slowly placed a framed, professionally canceled $10 check from the very first, fateful lottery ticket on the center of the table, right next to Brenda's water glass. This piece of paper was my entire, single investment into my freedom from all of you. Just as the entire family stared in silent, terrified horror at the framed $10 bill, Leo, my sharp, brilliant lawyer, entered the room, walking with cold purpose, and served them all with thick stacks of legal papers. I was officially suing them for massive emotional distress, and the full value of the personal belongings they had stolen or sold after they left me. Leo had compiled a secret, detailed inventory. But the worst surprise, the final hammer blow, was reserved for Brenda. I revealed that I had secretly, anonymously paid off the entire mortgage on Brenda's highly prized house, and then immediately legally foreclosed on it the very next day, as I had secretly and legally bought the debt from the bank through one of my holding companies. Brenda let out a small, strangled gasp of pure terror. Her prized, beloved home was now legally mine, and she was instantly ruined, financially and morally. The technical language of the legal documents made the truth undeniable. I then moved on to Kyle, my former husband. He sat there, pale, stunned, and completely defeated, looking like a ghost of the man I had married. Sandra then revealed that she had secretly, anonymously invested a substantial sum of the lottery money in the exact company where Kyle worked, successfully becoming the majority shareholder in secret, completely unnoticed by anyone. I then had him immediately and publicly fired for gross ethical failings and financial misconduct, citing the massive, public lawsuit and the impending public scandal as the primary, irrefutable cause for his immediate termination. His entire long career, which he valued far more than me, was instantly and completely destroyed by my own hand and my own powerful money. He had lost absolutely everything, his wife, his home, and his entire career. In a single, cruel, perfect moment of justice, a direct consequence of his betrayal. Next was Tara, my greedy, awful sister-in-law. She worked at a very chic, popular boutique in the city, and had been loudly bragging to every single person in her life about her suddenly rich sister, to try and impress her demanding boss and get a big promotion. I calmly pulled out my new phone and called the store's owner right there at the table, using the speakerphone function so everyone could hear. The owner, as it turned out, was a personal friend I had made while in my recovery and therapy. I told her the true, entire, awful story of Tara's wicked betrayal and the current massive lawsuit. The boutique owner, disgusted by Tara's lies and greed, immediately fired Tara over the phone for misrepresentation and creating a hostile, lying work environment. Tara immediately burst into loud, hysterical, dramatic tears, realizing her future was completely ruined by her own terrible greed and her own big mouth. Brenda, completely hysterical, sobbing loudly, and unable to control herself, suddenly screamed at the top of her lungs, "You're a wicked, cold monster, Sandra. That horrible car accident ruined you and made you evil and calculating." I looked at her with a calm, cold detachment that frightened her. I slowly and deliberately replied, "The car accident did not ruin me, Brenda. It actually revealed you, Kyle and Tara, and your true, horrible, selfish characters. It revealed all of you for the greedy cowards you are." I paused for a long, dramatic breath, letting my words sink in and burn. And as for being ruined, I slowly took off my expensive jacket, revealing my toned, strong arms and my perfectly straight, powerful posture, a testament to my hard work. I am stronger, richer, healthier, and much happier than I have ever been in my entire life. You all just gave me the single, perfect motivation and the cruel, necessary reason to become this much better, stronger woman. My words were calm but final, sealing their total and complete fate. As her entire family sat there completely ruined, silent, and humiliated in the very expensive public restaurant, paralyzed by shock and shame, I calmly took out my new untraceable phone one last time. You only came back for the lottery money. You know that. But there is absolutely none for you. Not a single cent. You earned your freedom from me, and now I'm earning mine from you. And now, I said, looking each of them directly in the eye, one last cold time, I am blocking all of you, permanently and forever. I opened their 3 contact cards, pressed the block button 3 times quickly and decisively, and then I simply stood up and walked calmly out of the restaurant, my head held high, leaving them completely alone to face their public humiliation, their legal papers, their ruined reputations, and their sudden, total ruin. The cruel circle of betrayal was finally, perfectly, and coldly completed. The aftermath of the revenge was quiet, peaceful, and deeply satisfying, filled with a sense of pure justice. I didn't just get my perfect, calculated revenge. I finally built the beautiful, honest life I had always deserved. I immediately started a massive personal foundation that helps people in severe financial crisis due to unexpected medical emergencies, giving them the exact, essential support, both financial and emotional, that my wicked family had cruelly denied me. My foundation was my new, beautiful purpose, a way to turn their horrible cruelty into kindness and help for thousands of others. I was finally using my enormous wealth to do something truly meaningful and good, finding profound peace and meaning in helping those who were just as vulnerable and abandoned as I once was, trapped in that cold living room. I also found something much more important than money, revenge, or a beautiful house. True, lasting love. I revealed that I reconnected with someone kind, decent, and honest from my distant past. A wonderful man who had nothing at all to do with my money, my accident, or my cruel revenge against my family. He loves me completely for my new steel strength, my intelligence, and my kind heart, not for the huge, meaningless numbers in my bank account. We are now building a quiet, loving life together, one based on mutual respect, complete honesty, and deep, profound trust. Something I never, ever had with Kyle in our entire marriage. He is my peace and my true, lasting happiness, and I know deep in my soul that he will never, ever abandon me in my moment of need, no matter how bad things get. I looked directly into the camera, a peaceful, genuine smile resting on my face. They all thought my lowest, weakest moment was their perfect, easy escape route, their chance to cut the cord and abandon me forever without consequence. But they were absolutely and tragically wrong. My voice was calm and steady, filled with quiet power. That lowest point was actually the single, solid, necessary foundation for everything I was truly meant to be in this world. A strong, independent woman. Winning the lottery did not fundamentally change me into a better person. It just finally gave me the powerful tools and the ultimate financial freedom to build the honest, purposeful life I truly deserved and the opportunity to help thousands of others. I offered one final piece of hard-won wisdom, looking straight into the lens. To anyone who has ever been betrayed or cruelly discarded, remember this clearly. Your best, strongest revenge is never hatred or cruelty. It is your deep, inner peace. It is your powerful happiness. It is your final, beautiful success. Now go out there and build it, one strong, beautiful brick at a time, until your foundation is unbreakable.